This is TWiT. There's so many places we could begin here. I could continue with the Joe Rogan saga, which gets wilder and wilder as we go. But I think we should talk about Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook, which suffered the biggest stock market loss, biggest wipeout, as Bloomberg put it, in history this week. Shares went down 26%, which is a $251 billion change in value. I want to, though, be clear, and I'd love to hear what you all think about this. This didn't come out of Mark Zuckerberg's pocket. This is not, they don't have a bill for $251 billion they have to pay. This is the stock market valuing the company. It's shareholders, I guess, who will lose money, to the extent that Mark's a shareholder, I guess that means his stock is worth less. And I think some of this is because analysts were disappointed, which seems like a terrible reason to take value off the company. Owen, do you think Facebook Meta is worth less in reality or just on the stock market?
I mean, what is real, Leo?
NFTs, baby, that's what's real.
I mean, what's the difference between a share of stock and an NFT? It's all like a belief.
That's a good point. Right? It's fiat currency. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a share is a theoretical claim on the future earnings of a company. So I think what people were scared about here was not the present, how Facebook is doing, how Meta is doing as a company right now, but the future, the fact that users of the Facebook app, the blue app actually dropped.
First time ever.
Right. And also usage, I think the death spiral is not just people like quitting the service or not, Facebook not replacing users it's losing fast enough. It's usage. And I think Facebook is really scared of TikTok as they should be.
Yeah. I mean, this should have been in the stock all along because we know young people don't really use Facebook. It's their parents' social network. They use TikTok or Snap or something else. Maybe they use Instagram, which is Facebook's, holding action against the youth. I think Facebook actually did a really interesting thing. They took advantage of this moment to blame Apple. They said, it's Apple's fault. We lost $10 billion because of the checkbox that you now get on iPhones where it says you want to let this company track you. I don't think they can actually demonstrably prove that was where the loss was. In fact, the $10.2 billion loss came from the Reality Labs. It's VR efforts, which have been very, very expensive with, of course, very little revenue.
Well, those are two.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Those are two
go
things.
Ahead.
There's there's the hard cost of investing in AR and VR, and then I think the other $10 billion. I mean, and $10 billion here, $10 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. The other $10 billion was missed revenue.
Right.
Like revenue that they could have gotten but didn't get.
Right.
So I think that there actually are like two separate chunks, and like you add that up, that's a $20 billion delta.
Am I crazy, though, Dan, to say that Facebook would like you to blame Apple? But in fact, Facebook doesn't want you to know is they have perfectly good other means of tracking you. They don't need Apple's ID for advertisers, and turning that off is actually meaningless from their point of view. But they would like to pretend, it seems to me, that's it's killing me. It's killing me.
Well, I don't mean this in the cultural sense, but I think all of these issues are real, substantial, and intersectional. I talk to people at Facebook who genuinely think that and they will stay off record. They genuinely think that the changes in iOS 14.5 and 15 did kneecap them, or at least in the very short term. But I think that the larger picture is certainly this drop in usage, which they have tried to duck into this or roll into this pivot to VR. So all of those things intersect with each other, and all of them as the end result, not just result in losing money, but a loss of influence, because that's really what money is, right? It's influence, power.
The daily active users went from 1.93 billion to 1.929 billion. Now, admittedly, what is that? That's a lot of millions. That's like a million. But when you have 1.9 billion users, I think it's almost a rounding error. Should we, Nicholas, what do you think? Is it over? Should we just throw in the towel? Should Facebook go home?
I don't know if Facebook should come. I have this conversation with my bosses and my friends all the time. Like, have we reached peak tech? I do wonder what, like, Gen Z, like, are they so, do they even remember a time before technology? Are they over this stuff? Do they not care? Is it not cool anymore? If you're a parent and you're thinking of sending your kids to college, do you want them to pursue a career in tech? Have we reached peak tech? I don't know. I was recently in Puerto Rico for a family thing, and I would say just hanging out with friends and family down there, Facebook, meaning the big blue app, is still heavily used.
And
certainly
WhatsApp, right?
Oh, yeah, WhatsApp. It's funny when I've probably sent like 5 iMessages in my life, actually. I'm on WhatsApp all day talking to my family, so yeah. I kind of have a slightly different perspective on, like, the messaging wars, I guess. But yeah, I don't know if I don't know, people are just over tech. I don't know, especially the past 2 years of looking into Zoom calls and all this stuff. Are people just burnt out? I don't know, but I think it's a very interesting question. I obviously don't know the answer. But yeah, I guess we'll see. I guess Zuck is trying to pivot to the metaverse, which I don't know how that will go. I suppose I'm more inclined to be cool with that as a big gamer and as a huge nerd. It's like, that's neat to me, but, like, is my adopted mom going to sit there with a AR or VR headset No, she's not. That's never going to happen. So I don't know. A very interesting series of events here.
I think you're right. I think the stock market anyway says we're at peak tech and it's over and we got to find something else. I should point out, though, if you bought into Facebook when it IPO'd, you're far from underwater. You've still made more than $250 a share since the IPO. As my wife keeps telling me. so it's not the end of the world for Facebook. And I often wonder, when you see these kinds of drops, Apple lost almost $200 billion in 2020. And by the way, that would have been a good time to buy some Apple stock, because not only did it recover, it kept on growing. I often wonder, Monday, is the stock market going to say, okay, we had our sell-off. Let's back to business as usual. So that's the real question for me. I don't care about the stock market so much, but the real question for me is this a bellwether? Is it the beginning of the end for Facebook? Is Facebook going the way of MySpace? Are they going to be able to make a pivot to augmented reality? Clearly, Zuckerberg feels like it. He actually had an all hands the day after the stock tumble. His eyes were red and watery, but he told everybody it was because of a scratched cornea, according to Bloomberg, who had unnamed persons at the event. He apparently, repeated what he'd already said in the earnings call, that it was the rise of TikTok, unprecedented level of competition is the phrase. Reels competing with Instagram, but he also said, "I want you all to focus on video. That this is the future." And I guess, does he mean video as in VR?
Turned out great last time.
Yeah. I mean, their homegrown video platform was a terrible flop, right?
And not just for Facebook, but for media companies as well.
Yeah, Microsoft flopped with Mixer. Facebook spent a lot of money to bring creators over. That didn't go anywhere.
Well, Facebook also, I mean, the last time they did a pivot to video, maybe 18, 36 months afterwards, they said, oops, we did a miscalculation, which caused companies like Mike to just vanish overnight.
Yep. I guess that's one issue with this is it could be that the tremors will be felt throughout the tech market, as you say, Nicholas, because Facebook is so kind of pivotal for news organizations, for everybody, in driving traffic, that failed Facebook might be bad in general for the tech industry. So maybe that's what we're seeing. I find it hard to write them off at this point.
Well, they're a platform, unlike MySpace. I mean, the comparisons to a previous era of tech are just not the same.
That's true. It's not MySpace. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Well, anyway, there's the Meta, the Meta story, such as it is. It's a great number, though, $251 billion in value. That does hurt in a couple of ways. It makes it harder to attract talent because, of course, you pay them in stock options. So it hurts in that way. It might make it harder to raise money if they needed to. So it's not a neutral event from their point of view at Meta, and it's a bad headline. But I don't think it means that they're necessary. I mean, 1.9 billion daily active users. That's pretty successful.
One point about attracting talent, they have had problems attracting engineering talent. And in the Valley, their reputation is pretty bad, at least when it comes to engineering talent. But on the other side, although we talk about all the losses, the $10 billion in their Meta component, they've attracted a ton of people from Microsoft, a ton. And the HoloLens people are pretty pissed off right now because they killed HoloLens 3. So they've done a very good job of attracting talent, experienced talent when it comes to AR, VR, and XR.
Yeah.
I have to think, though, that, part of the problem here is like Mark Zuckerberg is saying, hey, we're not the Facebook company anymore. We're Meta. AR and VR is where it's at. So if you're working at Meta on the Facebook app, you've got to feel like you're a second-class citizen, right? Like you're not taken seriously, even though you bring in all the money. And that's got to hurt morale. Like, how are they going to hire, engineers to work on fixing misinformation or optimizing ads or, dealing with the Apple ID issue? That's where I think they're going to feel the pinch.
Although, remember, Apple is paying $180,000 bonuses to its engineers not to go to Facebook. So it is a cutthroat competition in Silicon Valley for engineering talent. If you're good, you can write your own ticket. So all of these companies are trying to keep people, not just Facebook. And I don't think Facebook's the only company losing talent either. I think people just move around to kind of increase their value. Alexis Ohanian, I don't know if he's the expert on this. He's a VC now, co-found Reddit, said, we all knew this was going to happen. He told Bloomberg, Facebook ad product just doesn't cut the mustard anymore. The savviest marketers have started ditching Facebook for advertising. That might be the case. I don't think it has to do with Apple, to be honest with you. I think Facebook has plenty of ways of knowing who's watching what on their platform. But is it the case, do you think, that advertisers are turning their back on Facebook, that it's no longer the place to go? That would surprise me. What do you think, Nicholas?
Well, one thing I will say is that I never get better ads than I get on Instagram. My interests are pretty explicit. I'm into soccer. I said the sport of soccer, video game stuff, watches. Those are pretty much my three things. And every ad on Instagram is related to one of those three things. And I've definitely purchased several items off Instagram. So I don't know how they do it. I have a mixture of like, don't follow me, don't track, ad blocker. I try to put up a fight, I guess. And yet, the ads on Instagram are pretty good. So I don't know if marketers, they seem to be having a pretty good time, at least over at Instagram. I think you'd have to be
nuts to abandon either Facebook or Instagram. Look, we sell ads. That's how we make a living. And I've constantly worried about Facebook and Google just eating up the ad space, and now Amazon, because they have so much more information about the audience. We don't know anything about the audience. And I don't think Facebook's knowledge has gotten any worse thanks to Apple. I think that's a little bit of misdirection.
I think where it hurts Facebook, from what I understand, is tracking a purchase. So you get shown this great Instagram ad, and it pushes you off to a website, and Facebook no longer can tell if you are, if you actually like click buy.
Oh, wait a minute. You don't think so? Remember, Google was telling advertisers, oh, by the way, we can tell how many you sold because we got the credit card data as well. All of this stuff is sold to data brokers and sold on, isn't it? Don't they know everything anyway? Do you really think Facebook is in the dark about what you did?
Facebook's payments features have been, like they've always had trouble getting those kind of universally accepted. I still don't see a lot of like, even though in theory you can use your Facebook account, I think, to buy on some stores, I don't see a lot of merchants actually adopting that.
But I don't think you have to. I think that if you just use a credit card, that information will filter back to Facebook.
Eventually, the merchant can link it up, but does Facebook know?
And if there's if there's a like button or a Facebook bug of any kind on those pages, they know that you went there. I think Facebook.
But on mobile, that's a desktop feature, right? So on mobile, all those links get broken, and that's where Facebook's vulnerable.
Do they? The IDF. The only thing that button on Apple does, by the way, is turn off the ID for advertisers, so that information, that unique code, is not transmitted. But doesn't mean that Facebook doesn't see like buttons. Is that stopped by Safari? I know I use Firefox and it stops them. I don't know. Does Safari stop them?
Safari has a private-ish feature, right?
Yeah, I think it's that like private.
Right.
I don't
ish, Leo, ish.
I don't think that's that private. I think these days fingerprinting is so good. I think I don't know. It's a safe assumption that what you're doing is pretty well known by everybody on the web, whether or not you click that button on the IDFA. In fact, there have been a number of research studies that back that up over the last 6 months. So yeah, if you're running an ad blocker, but I don't think most people run ad blockers yet.